Weeks passed after the flagship's return to Earth, and the world began to change. News of humanity's victory against the Valak spread quickly, sparking both pride and fear among the population. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists worked around the clock, and leaders debated how to handle the newfound power of the nanotechnology. Ryan Carter found himself at the center of it all, giving interviews, attending summits, and advising decision-makers on the path forward. The crew of the flagship adjusted to life back on Earth, though none of them could fully leave the battle behind. Megan Cole spent long hours in labs, helping researchers understand the nanobots' behavior. "They're like living things," she explained during one presentation. "They adapt, they grow, and they respond to their environment. But that makes them unpredictable. If we don't treat them carefully, they could turn against us." Daniel Cruz tried to focus on his family, but his mind kept drifting back to the battlefield. He replayed the moments when the ship transformed, its weapons growing stronger with every hit. "It was like watching magic," he told his wife one evening. "But I can't shake the feeling that something so powerful could go wrong if we're not careful." Olivia Hart took a quieter role, assisting with training programs for new recruits. She knew the galaxy wouldn't wait for humanity to catch up, and she wanted to make sure others were ready for whatever came next. "We got lucky this time," she said to Ryan during a rare moment alone. "But luck won't save us forever. We need to be smarter, faster, and more united than ever." Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's why we have to keep pushing, not just for better tech, but for better ways to work together. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ships or our weapons. It's our ability to adapt, to learn, and to stand together when it matters most." Far across the galaxy, Kelthar stood in his quarters, his shame burning brighter with each passing day. The Council had stripped him of his command, assigning him to oversee research efforts aimed at countering human technology. Zenara visited him occasionally, her tone soft but firm. "This isn't the end, Kelthar," she said during one visit. "You made a mistake, but mistakes are how we learn. Use this time to prepare for yourself and for our people." Kelthar clenched his fists, his pride still raw. "And what happens when the humans come for us again? What then?" Zenara met his gaze, her voice steady. "Then we'll be ready, but only if we stop underestimating them. They've proven they're not just survivors, they're fighters. And fighters don't give up easily." Back on Earth, Ryan stood on a hill overlooking the ocean, the cool breeze brushing against his face. The stars above seemed endless, each one a reminder of the challenges ahead. Humanity had taken its first step toward becoming something greater, but the road was uncertain. For now, though, they had earned a chance to build, to grow, and to prove themselves worthy of their place in the galaxy. As he gazed upward, Ryan whispered to himself, "They mocked us once. They won't do it again." The journey ahead would test humanity in ways no one could predict. But Ryan knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And that unity, that shared determination, was humanity's greatest weapon of all. The human flagship finally approached Earth, its massive frame gliding silently through the atmosphere. The sight of their home planet filled the crew with a mix of pride and apprehension. They had left as defenders of a small colony, but they returned as pioneers of a new era for humanity. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, watching as blue oceans and sprawling continents came into view. The weight of what they carried, both physically and metaphorically, pressed heavily on his shoulders. As the ship landed at a secure military facility, scientists and officials swarmed the area, eager to examine the nanotechnology that had turned the tide of battle. Megan Cole worked alongside the engineers, explaining how the nanobots operated and cautioning against rushing their development. "They're incredible," she said, her voice firm, "but they're also unpredictable. If we push them too far too fast, we could lose control." Daniel Cruz wandered through the bustling facility, marveling at the flurry of activity. "It's like everyone's trying to figure out how to bottle lightning," he joked to Olivia Hart, who stood nearby observing the proceedings. "Do you think they'll listen to us? Or will they just see this as a chance to build bigger weapons?" Olivia crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "I hope they listen. This isn't just about power. It's about responsibility. We showed the galaxy what we're capable of, but now we need to decide how we use that capability." Ryan met with high-ranking officials in a private briefing room, where maps, diagrams, and data projections covered every surface. The leaders listened intently as he recounted the battle against the Valak, their faces shifting between awe and concern. "This technology changed everything," Ryan emphasized, his tone measured but urgent. "But it's not a solution. It's a tool, a powerful one. If we misuse it, we risk losing more than just trust. We risk losing ourselves." One of the officials leaned forward, his voice sharp with skepticism. "And what do you propose we do? Sit back and wait for the next attack? The Valak won't forget this defeat. Neither will others who hear about it." Ryan nodded, acknowledging the truth in the man's words. "No, we prepare, but we do it carefully. We study the nanobots, refine them, and make sure they work for us, not the other way around. And we start building alliances. Humanity can't face the galaxy alone." Meanwhile, far across the stars, Calthar stood before the Valak Council, his head bowed in shame. The elders listened silently as he recounted the events of the battle, their expressions unreadable. When he finished, one of them spoke, her voice cold and unyielding. "You underestimated them, Calthar. You allowed your arrogance to blind you. Because of your failure, humanity has become a threat to us all." Calthar clenched his fists, struggling to contain his anger and humiliation. "I admit my mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "But humanity is no longer weak or insignificant. Their technology, it grows stronger with every attack. If we face them again without understanding it, we will fail." Zanera stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. "Then let us learn from this. Let us study their tech, find its weaknesses, and prepare for the future. Humanity may have bested us once, but they won't do it again." Back on Earth, Ryan walked alone through the quiet corridors of the facility, his mind racing. He thought about the colonies scattered across the galaxy, each one vulnerable to threats both known and unknown. He thought about the Valak, humiliated but unlikely to stay silent for long. Most of all, he thought about the responsibility resting on humanity's shoulders. They had taken their first step toward becoming something greater, but greatness came with risks. As he gazed out a window at the night sky, Ryan whispered to himself, "We've proven we can stand up to the galaxy. Now we have to prove we can live in it." The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time, Ryan felt a spark of hope. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were evolving. And whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The human flagship began its journey back to Earth, carrying with it the weight of a victory that felt both triumphant and fragile. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, watching as the colony below grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the vastness of space. The crew worked quietly, their earlier excitement replaced by a shared understanding of what lay ahead. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Megan Cole sat at her station, running diagnostics on the ship's systems. The nanobots had settled into a kind of standby mode, but they were still active, ready to adapt if needed. Megan couldn't help but marvel at their complexity. "It's like they're alive," she muttered to herself, shaking her head in disbelief. "They saved us, but I can't shake the feeling they're watching us too." Daniel Cruz overheard her and chuckled nervously. "Watching us? You mean like they've got minds of their own?" He glanced around the bridge, half expecting the walls to shift or change. "If that's true, we better hope they're friendly." Olivia Hart shot him a reassuring smile. "Relax, Daniel. They're just machines, really advanced ones, sure, but still machines. We control them, not the other way around." Ryan turned to face his crew, sensing the unease lingering beneath their words. "We've accomplished something incredible," he said, his voice calm but firm. But this technology, it's powerful, and power can be dangerous. We need to make sure we use it wisely. That starts with understanding it fully. As the flagship sped through space, the surviving Valak fleet limped toward one of their outposts, their ships battered and their spirits broken. Kelthar remained silent for most of the journey, his mind consumed by thoughts of the humans. How had they done it? How had they turned his attack into their advantage? Every attempt he made to crush them only seemed to make them stronger. Zinera approached him cautiously, her expression unreadable. "Commander," she began, her tone measured, "the Council is waiting for your report. They'll want answers about what happened." Kelthar's jaw tightened, his pride stinging at the thought of admitting failure. "Answers? What am I supposed to tell them? That we were beaten by primitives? That their ships grew larger and stronger while ours fell apart?" Zinera placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice softening. "Tell them the truth, that humanity has changed. They're no longer weak or insignificant. If we don't respect them, we'll lose more than just a battle. We'll lose our place in the galaxy." Back on the flagship, Ryan gathered his officers once more, this time to discuss their return to Earth. "When we get home," he said, "the scientists will want to study the nanobots. They'll push for faster development, bigger projects. But we need to be careful. Rushing this could lead to mistakes. Mistakes we can't afford." Olivia nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "What about the colonies? Do we share this tech with them? It could protect them from future attacks, but it might also put them in more danger if others see them as a threat." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "That's the problem. We don't know who to trust yet. For now, we keep this quiet. Only those who need to know will know. Once we understand the full potential of the nanobots, we'll decide how to move forward." Megan spoke up hesitantly, her voice tinged with worry. "And what if someone tries to take it from us? Other species, rogue factions. They'll come after us once they hear about this." Ryan met her gaze, his expression resolute. "Then we'll be ready. This isn't just about defending ourselves anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that humanity won't back down. We've earned our place here, and we'll fight to keep it." As the flagship continued its journey, the crew prepared for the challenges ahead. They knew the road wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together, they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. And together, they would face whatever came next. The human colony below breathed a collective sigh of relief as the news of the victory spread. Cheers erupted in the streets, and families hugged one another, grateful for the safety of their loved ones. The crew aboard the flagship shared in the celebration, though their joy was tempered by the knowledge that the fight wasn't truly over. They had won the battle, but the war, and the larger implications of their newfound technology, loomed heavily on their minds. Ryan Carter stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The flagship's transformation was still visible, its once modest frame now towering and bristling with advanced weaponry. It was a symbol of humanity's potential, but also a reminder of the dangers that came with such power. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into uncharted territory, where every decision could have far-reaching consequences. Olivia Hart joined him a few moments later, her steps soft against the metal floor. "You should be celebrating with the others," she said gently, leaning against the railing beside him. "You led us through this. We wouldn't have made it without you." Ryan shook his head, his gaze fixed on the stars. "It wasn't just me, Olivia. Everyone played their part. And honestly, I don't feel like celebrating yet. This tech, it's incredible, but it scares me too. What happens if we lose control of it? Or worse, what if someone else gets their hands on it?" Olivia frowned, considering his words. "You're right to be cautious, but think about what we've achieved. We faced an enemy stronger than us, and found a way to win. That has to count for something." Ryan nodded slowly, though his expression remained troubled. "It does count. But winning isn't enough. We need to prepare for what comes next. The Valak won't forget this. Neither will anyone else who hears about it. Far away, Kelthar sat brooding in his quarters, the weight of his defeat pressing down on him. His once unshakable confidence was shattered, replaced by doubt and anger. Images of the human ships growing larger and stronger haunted him, replaying endlessly in his mind. How could they have been so underestimated? How could he have been so wrong? Zenera entered cautiously, holding a data pad filled with reports from their analysts. "Commander," she began, her tone respectful but firm, "we've reviewed the battle footage. Their technology, it's unlike anything we've encountered. It adapts, evolves, and grows stronger with every attack. If we face them again, we'll need new strategies." Kelthar's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp with frustration. "New strategies against a species that turns our own weapons against us. Tell me, Zenara, how do you fight something like that?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "We adapt too. We study their tech, find its weaknesses, and exploit them. But more importantly, we stop underestimating them. Humans are resourceful, Commander. They may not have our strength or speed, but they're clever. That's what makes them dangerous." Kelthar clenched his fists, his pride warring with the bitter truth of her words. "So what do you suggest? Should we grovel before them? Beg for peace?" "No," Zenera replied firmly. "But we must respect them. Treat them as equals, not as pests to be crushed. If we don't, we risk losing everything." Back on the flagship, Ryan called together his senior officers for one final meeting before heading back to Earth. The mood was serious, the earlier celebrations fading into the background. "This victory changes things," Ryan began, his voice steady. "Not just for us, but for all of humanity. The Valak know we're a threat now, and so will others. We need to be ready." Megan Cole spoke up, her tone thoughtful. "The nanobots worked better than we expected, but they're still unpredictable. If we push them too far, they might spiral out of control. We can't afford to take that risk." Daniel Kruz nodded in agreement. "And there's another thing. We've drawn attention to ourselves. Other species might see us as a target now, not just the Valak. We need allies, not enemies." Ryan sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You're both right. This isn't just about defending ourselves anymore. It's about finding our place in the galaxy. We've proven we can stand up to threats, but survival isn't enough. We need to build trust with other humans, with colonies, and maybe even with some alien species." As the meeting ended, Ryan returned to the viewport one last time. The stars stretched endlessly before him, each one a mystery waiting to be explored. Humanity had taken its first step toward becoming something greater, but the path ahead was uncertain. For now, though, they had earned a moment of peace and a chance to plan for the future. The void of space was eerily quiet after the chaos of battle. The Valak fleet had fled, leaving behind a trail of wreckage and drifting debris. On board the human flagship, the crew allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his hands resting on the edge of the console as he stared out at the remnants of the alien ships. His heart still raced, but a sense of relief washed over him. They had won, against all odds. Olivia Hart leaned back in her seat, her fingers brushing against her temple as if trying to steady herself. "That was insane," she said, her voice soft, but filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like it. The nanobots, they saved us." Ryan nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the view screen. "They did more than save us. They changed everything. We're not just survivors anymore. We're something else entirely." Megan Cole chimed in from her station, her tone cautious but excited. "The ship's systems are stabilizing, Captain. The nanobots have stopped expanding for now, but they're still active. If we need them again, they'll be ready." Daniel Kruz let out a low whistle, shaking his head in disbelief. "I don't even know what to say. One minute, we were about to get wiped out, and the next, we're blasting those aliens into dust. It's like we became unstoppable. Ryan turned to face his crew, his expression serious despite the victory. We got lucky today. The nanobots worked better than anyone could have predicted, but we can't rely on luck forever. This technology, it's powerful, maybe too powerful. We need to understand it fully before we use it again. The crew fell silent, each of them processing what had happened. The battle had been a test, not just of their courage, but of humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. For the first time, they realized just how much potential lay within their grasp. But with that potential came responsibility and danger. Meanwhile, far away from the battlefield, the surviving Valak ships regrouped in the shadow of a distant moon. Kelthar paced the bridge of his flagship, his movements sharp and agitated. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by simmering anger and humiliation. The humans had bested him, and worse, they had done so using technology he couldn't comprehend. Zinera approached cautiously, her voice calm but firm. "Commander, we need to report this to the Council. Humanity is no longer a minor threat. They've proven they can challenge us. If we don't prepare, they'll come for us next." Kelthar stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes burning with frustration. "Do you think I don't know that? Those primitives humiliated us. They mocked our power and turned it against us. How could we have been so blind?" Zinera hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It wasn't blindness, Commander. It was arrogance. We underestimated them because we refused to see them as equals. But now we have no choice. We must learn from this defeat, or risk losing everything." Kelthar clenched his fists, his pride warring with the harsh reality of their situation. He wanted nothing more than to return and crush the humans, to erase the shame of their victory. But deep down, he knew Zinera was right. Attacking again without understanding their enemy's new capabilities would only lead to another defeat. Back on the human flagship, Ryan gathered his senior officers for a debriefing. The mood was somber despite the triumph. "We won today," Ryan began, his voice steady. "But this isn't the end. The Valak will be back, and next time, they'll be ready for us. We need to stay ahead of them." Olivia nodded, her earlier excitement tempered by the weight of their responsibility. "What do we do now, Captain? The nanobots gave us an edge, but we can't count on them alone. Sooner or later, the Valak will find a way to counter them." Ryan crossed his arms, his mind racing. "We keep improving. The scientists back on Earth need to study this tech, refine it, and find ways to make it even better. And we train, harder than ever, because if the Valak return, we need to be ready." As the meeting ended, Ryan returned to the viewport, gazing at the stars beyond. The battle had proven humanity's resilience, but it had also shown how fragile their position in the galaxy truly was. The Valak weren't the only threat out there, and the humans' newfound power would attract attention, both good and bad. For now, though, they had survived. And survival, Ryan reminded himself, was the first step towards something greater. The Valak fleet was in disarray. Ships that had once dominated the battlefield now scrambled to avoid destruction, their sleek designs no match for the ever-evolving human vessels. Kelthar's confidence was crumbling, replaced by a growing sense of panic. He gripped the edge of his command console, his knuckles white as he stared at the chaos unfolding around him. The humans were not just surviving. They were thriving, turning every attack into an opportunity to grow stronger. Zinera stood beside him, her expression grim. She had tried to warn him, but Kelthar's arrogance had blinded him to the danger. Now she could see the fear creeping into the eyes of the crew. "Commander," she said firmly, "we can't keep this up. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. Every shot we fire makes them stronger. If we stay, we'll lose everything." Kelthar glared at her, his pride refusing to let him back down. "We are the Valak," he snapped. "We don't retreat. We crush our enemies. They're still outnumbered. They can't win." But even as he spoke, another Valak cruiser exploded in a burst of light, its remains scattering across space. The human flagship loomed larger than ever, its weapons firing with precision and power. Ryan Carter's voice crackled over the comms, calm but firm. "Surrender, Calthar. You've underestimated us long enough. Stand down, or you'll regret it." Calthar clenched his teeth, his hands trembling with rage. How could this be happening? Humans were supposed to be weak, insignificant. Yet here they were, outmaneuvering and overpowering his fleet. He turned to Zanara, his voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over. Order all ships to focus fire on their flagship. Concentrate everything we have left. We'll tear it apart before it grows any stronger." Zanara hesitated, torn between loyalty to her commander and the survival of her crew. But she nodded and relayed the order. The remaining Valak ships regrouped, forming a tight formation as they prepared to unleash their most devastating attack yet. Plasma cannons charged to full power, their glow illuminating the dark void of space. On board the human flagship, Ryan watched the Valak's movements with sharp eyes. "They're planning something big," he said, addressing his crew. "Olivia, keep us moving. Daniel, find us an opening. Megan, make sure the nanobots are ready for whatever comes next." The crew worked tirelessly, their earlier fear replaced by fierce determination. Olivia guided the ship through evasive maneuvers, dodging plasma bolts as they streaked past. Daniel plotted trajectories, searching for weaknesses in the enemy formation. Megan monitored the nanobots, ensuring they adapted quickly to the increasing strain on the ship's systems. When the Valak fired their concentrated barrage, the flagship absorbed the energy like never before. The nanobots worked furiously, converting the massive influx of energy into new defenses and weapons. Armor thickened, turrets multiplied, and entire sections of the ship expanded outward, creating a fortress-like structure that seemed almost invincible. "They're making us stronger again," Megan exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "Every hit only makes us better." Ryan nodded, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "Then let's show them what we're made of. Fire everything we've got." The flagship unleashed a barrage of its own, targeting the heart of the Valak formation. Plasma beams and missiles tore through space, striking multiple alien ships at once. Explosions lit up the void as the Valak fleet crumbled under the relentless assault. Crew members aboard the human ships cheered, their spirits lifted by the sight of their enemies faltering. Calthar watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. His officers shouted frantic orders, but it was too late. The humans had turned the tide of the battle, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. For the first time in his life, Calthar felt fear, not just for himself, but for his entire species. "Commander," Zanara said quietly, her voice steadied despite the chaos. "It's over. If we don't retreat now, there won't be anything left of us." Calthar didn't respond. He stared at the view screen, his mind racing. Humanity had mocked him, tricked him, and now defeated him. But as much as it pained him to admit it, Zanara was right. Staying would mean annihilation. Reluctantly, he gave the order to fall back, his voice heavy with defeat. "All ships, retreat. Now." The remaining Valak vessels turned and fled, disappearing into the depths of space. On board the human flagship, Ryan exhaled deeply, the weight of the battle finally lifting. They had won, but he knew this was only the beginning. As the battle continued, the human ships became something entirely new. What had started as a desperate defense was now turning into a stunning display of ingenuity and resilience. The flagship, once an ordinary cruiser, towered over the battlefield, its sleek, reinforced hull bristling with advanced weaponry. Smaller human vessels followed suit, their frames expanding and adapting with each hit they absorbed. It was as if the ships themselves were alive, growing stronger with every challenge. Calthar's frustration boiled over. He slammed his fist against the armrest of his command chair, his earlier arrogance replaced by disbelief. "This isn't possible," he shouted, glaring at the view screen. The human fleet, which moments ago had seemed on the verge of collapse, was now matching. and even surpassing the firepower of his own ships. Every shot fired by the Valak only fueled the humans' transformation, making them more dangerous than before. Zinera stood nearby, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. She couldn't deny what she was seeing. The human ships weren't just repairing themselves. They were evolving. Their weapons grew more powerful, their defenses more impenetrable. Even their speed increased as engines adapted to handle the larger frames. She clenched her jaw, knowing they were losing the upper hand. "Commander, we need to rethink our strategy," she said cautiously. "Their technology, whatever it is beyond anything we've encountered." Kelthar ignored her, his pride refusing to let him back down. "No, we are the superior species. Humans are nothing but pests. Fire everything we have at their flagship." The Valak fleet unleashed another barrage of plasma fire, targeting the massive human vessel that now dominated the battlefield. But this time, the humans were ready. Ryan Carter watched the incoming attack with grim determination. "Shields up, full power," he ordered. "Olivia, angle us to absorb the energy. Megan, prepare the nanobots for rapid adaptation." The plasma bolts struck the flagship head-on, lighting up the view screen with blinding flashes. For a moment, the crew held their breath, fearing the worst. But then the ship responded in a way that left them awestruck. The nanobots absorbed the energy like sponges, converting it into raw material to further enhance the vessel. Armor thickened, turrets multiplied, and entire sections of the ship expanded outward, creating a fortress-like structure that dwarfed even the largest Valak cruisers. "They're getting bigger again," Daniel Cruz exclaimed, pointing at the monitors. His voice trembled with a mix of fear and excitement. "Look at the size of our ship. It's like a monster now." Ryan allowed himself a brief smile, though his focus remained sharp. "It's not just about size," he said. "We're faster, stronger, and smarter. Let's use that to our advantage." The flagship retaliated with devastating force. Its newly formed plasma cannons fired in unison, sending beams of concentrated energy slicing through space. Two more Valak ships exploded in quick succession, their crews unable to react in time. The remaining alien vessels scrambled to regroup, but the humans pressed their advantage, launching coordinated attacks that exploited gaps in the enemy formation. On board the human ships, morale soared. The crew worked tirelessly, feeding data to the nanobots and adjusting tactics on the fly. Olivia guided the flagship through tight maneuvers, dodging enemy fire while positioning it for maximum impact. Megan monitored the ship's systems, ensuring the nanobots kept pace with the rapidly changing demands of battle. Daniel relayed targeting coordinates to the gunners, his earlier nervousness replaced by fierce determination. Even among the smaller human vessels, the tide was turning. Each ship grew stronger with every hit it took, adapting in real time to counter the Valak's attacks. What had started as a one-sided slaughter was now becoming a fight the humans could win. Kelthar watched in mounting horror as his fleet dwindled before his eyes. Ships that had been part of his proud armada were now reduced to drifting wreckage. His officers muttered anxiously, some voicing doubts about continuing the battle. Zinera stepped closer, her tone urgent. "Commander, we're losing. If we don't retreat now, there won't be anything left of us." But Kelthar refused to listen. His pride blinded him to reason. "Retreat? Never. We are the Valak. We do not run from anyone, least of all these primitives." His words rang hollow as another Valak cruiser exploded under the relentless assault of the human ships. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. And Kelthar, for all his arrogance, couldn't deny the truth any longer. Humanity had become something far greater than he had ever imagined. The Valak ships unleashed another wave of plasma fire, their cannons glowing brighter than ever. Kelthar watched from his flagship, confident that this next barrage would crush the human resistance once and for all. He couldn't understand what was happening to their ships. They seemed to be changing, growing, but he refused to believe it was anything more than a desperate attempt to intimidate his fleet. To him, humans were still weak, and their tricks wouldn't save them. On board the human flagship, Ryan Carter braced himself as the alien weapons locked onto their position. The view screen lit up with streaks of blinding energy hurtling toward them. For a moment, fear gripped the crew. Even with the nanotech repairs and upgrades, could their ship withstand such power? But then something remarkable happened. As the plasma bolt struck, the nanobots embedded in the ship's structure sprang into action. They absorbed the energy from the impacts, using it to fuel their work. Damaged sections of the hull repaired themselves almost instantly, while new layers of armor formed over vulnerable areas. What had been a standard cruiser moments ago now expanded further, its frame stretching outward like a living organism adapting to survive. "Captain, look!" Olivia Hart exclaimed, pointing at the monitors. "The nanobots are converting the attack energy into enhancements. We're not just repairing, we're evolving." Ryan leaned forward, studying the readings on the screens. His heart raced as he realized the full potential of the technology. The ship wasn't just growing bigger, it was becoming faster, stronger, and more dangerous. New weapon systems emerged from previously empty sections of the hull, gleaming under the faint light of distant stars. Plasma turrets, missile launchers, and shield generators appeared where there had been nothing before. "This changes everything," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We can fight back now. Target their lead ship. Let's show them what we're capable of." The crew sprang into action. Daniel Cruz plotted targeting coordinates, his hands moving quickly over his console. Megan Cole monitored the newly formed weapon systems, ensuring they were online and ready to fire. Olivia adjusted the ship's trajectory, positioning them for an optimal strike. Everyone worked together seamlessly, driven by a newfound sense of hope. When the flagship fired its first shot, the effect was stunning. A beam of concentrated energy lashed out, striking one of the Valak cruisers with devastating precision. The alien ship shuddered violently, its shields collapsing under the unexpected force. Seconds later, it exploded in a brilliant burst of light, sending fragments spiraling into space. Calthar stared at the scene in disbelief. One of his finest ships had been destroyed in an instant, and by a vessel that should have been inferior in every way. "What is this?" he demanded, turning to Zanara. "How are they doing this?" Zanara hesitated, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. The human ships weren't just holding their ground, they were advancing. More of their vessels were undergoing similar transformations, growing larger and more formidable with each passing second. She swallowed hard, her usual confidence wavering. "I don't know, Commander, but whatever it is, it's real." Back on the flagship, the human crew cheered as their weapons proved effective against the seemingly invincible Valak. Ryan allowed himself a small smile but quickly refocused. This was no time to celebrate. They still faced overwhelming odds. The enemy fleet outnumbered them, and many of the alien ships remained untouched. "Don't get cocky," Ryan warned his team. "We've got their attention now, which means they'll come at us harder. Stay sharp and keep adapting." As if on cue, the Valak regrouped, their remaining ships forming a tight formation. Calthar roared orders to his crew, his arrogance replaced by frustration and anger. "Focus your fire on their flagship. Take it down before it grows any stronger." But Ryan was already ahead of him. "Olivia, adjust our course. Daniel, find us a blind spot in their formation. Megan, keep feeding data to the nanobots. Make sure we're ready for whatever they throw at us." The battle raged on, the humans fighting with a tenacity that surprised even themselves. Each attack from the Valak only made their ships stronger, their defenses more resilient. It was as if the aliens were playing directly into their hands, unknowingly fueling the very technology designed to defeat them. For the first time since the battle began, Ryan felt a glimmer of optimism. They might actually stand a chance. Kelthar's patience was wearing thin. He had expected the humans to crumble under the weight of his threats, but instead, they stood defiant. The audacity of their response infuriated him. How dare these primitive creatures challenge the might of the Valak? His fingers tapped impatiently on the armrest of his command chair as he watched the human ships hold their positions, refusing to retreat or surrender. "They're stalling," Kelthar muttered, his voice sharp with irritation. "They must think reinforcements are coming." He glanced at Sinara, who stood silently by his side, her expression unreadable. "Well, let's teach them a lesson they won't forget." Without waiting for further discussion, Kelthar gave the order to attack. The Valak fleet surged forward, their sleek ships cutting through the void like blades. Plasma cannons hummed with energy, and within moments, bolts of searing light streaked toward the human vessels. The first wave of fire struck with devastating force, obliterating several smaller ships in an instant. Explosions lit up the darkness of space, sending debris spiraling into the void. On board the human flagship, alarms blared as the crew scrambled to respond. Ryan Carter gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles white, as he watched the chaos unfold. The view screen showed the destruction around them. Ships that had been part of their fleet just moments ago were now nothing more than clouds of wreckage. Panic began to spread among the crew, but Ryan forced himself to stay calm. "Stay focused," he barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy. Olivia, adjust our shields and keep us moving. Daniel, plot evasive maneuvers. Megan, monitor the structural integrity. I don't want any surprises." Olivia's hands flew over her controls, rerouting power to the ship's defensive systems. Daniel leaned over his console, sweat beading on his forehead, as he calculated trajectories to avoid the next barrage. Megan, meanwhile, kept a close eye on the ship's status, her brow furrowed in concentration. Despite the fear gnawing at them, the crew worked together with practiced efficiency. But the Valak weren't done yet. Another volley of plasma fire tore through space, narrowly missing the flagship but striking a nearby cruiser. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the human formation, throwing several ships off course. Ryan clenched his jaw, knowing they couldn't keep this up for long. Their defenses were holding, for now, but it was only a matter of time before the Valak overwhelmed them. "Captain," Megan called out suddenly, her voice trembling. "The hull is taking too much strain. If we take another direct hit, we won't blast." Ryan turned to her, his mind racing. This was the moment of truth. The experimental nanotechnology hidden within their ships was their only hope, but activating it mid-battle was risky. If it failed, they'd be left even more vulnerable. Still, he didn't see another choice. "Activate the nanotech," Ryan ordered, his voice firm despite the uncertainty clawing at him. "Do it now." Megan hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Her fingers danced across her console, entering the commands that would awaken the dormant system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the ship began to change. Sections of the hull shimmered as if alive, repairing themselves where damage had occurred. Cracks sealed shut, and weakened areas reinforced instantly. But that wasn't all. The ship seemed to grow, its frame expanding outward as new layers of armor formed. Weapon turrets emerged from previously empty sections, gleaming ominously in the dim light of the stars. What's happening?" Daniel whispered, staring wide-eyed at the transformation unfolding around them. "It's working," Olivia said, her voice filled with awe. "The nanobots are adapting. They are using the energy from the attacks to rebuild and improve the ship." Ryan allowed himself a brief smile, though his heart still pounded with adrenaline. "Good. Now let's show them what we're made of." As the Valak prepared for another assault, they noticed something strange. The human ships weren't retreating or breaking apart as expected. Instead, they were growing larger, stronger, and more formidable right before their eyes. Confusion rippled through the alien ranks, but Kelthar dismissed it as some kind of trick. "They're bluffing," he snarled. "Fire again. Destroy them." But deep down, a flicker of doubt began to creep into his mind. Something about the humans' resilience unsettled him. and he didn't like it one bit. In the cold silence of deep space, a fleet of alien ships loomed near a small human colony. These ships belonged to the Valak, a species known for their arrogance and disdain for weaker civilizations. Their leader, Calthar, stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tiny human vessels guarding the settlement below. To him, these ships looked like toys, fragile, slow, and utterly insignificant compared to the sleek, deadly warships of the Valak. Calthar turned to his second-in-command, Zinara, who stood nearby. "Look at them," he said with a sneer. "They think those scraps of metal can stop us. Humans are nothing but children playing with fire." His voice dripped with mockery, and his crew laughed nervously, unsure if they should share his confidence or fear his recklessness. On board one of the human ships, Captain Ryan Carter stood firm, his eyes fixed on the glowing dots of the alien fleet through the viewport. He was a man in his late 30s, with sharp features and a quiet determination that inspired respect from his crew. Next to him stood Lieutenant Olivia Hart, a skilled navigator with quick reflexes and an unshakable focus. Together, they had faced danger before, but nothing quite like this. "Sir," Olivia said, breaking the tense silence, "their weapons are far superior to ours. If we engage, we'll be outmatched." Her tone was calm, but there was a flicker of worry in her voice. Ryan nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. The Valak were indeed stronger, faster, and better armed. But retreat wasn't an option. The colony below depended on them. Ryan glanced at the crew scattered across the bridge. Each face carried its own mix of fear and resolve. There was Daniel Cruz, the navigator who always cracked jokes to lighten the mood, though today he was unusually quiet. Nearby, Megan Cole, the ship's engineer, monitored the systems with steady hands, ensuring everything was ready for whatever came next. They weren't soldiers by choice. They were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. The comms crackled to life as the Valak sent a transmission. On the main screen, Calthar appeared, his alien features sharp and angular, exuding arrogance. "Humans," he began, his voice laced with contempt, "your resistance is pointless. Surrender your colony, and perhaps we will spare your lives." Ryan clenched his jaw, but kept his expression neutral. He stepped closer to the screen, meeting Calthar's gaze without flinching. "We won't surrender," he replied firmly. "This colony is ours, and we'll defend it." Calthar laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the speakers. "Defend it? With what? Your pitiful ships are no match for us. You're wasting time and lives." Olivia shot Ryan a worried glance. She knew he was right. Their chances of winning were slim. Yet Ryan's mind raced with possibilities. Hidden within their ships was experimental technology, a secret weapon developed in the labs back on Earth. It was risky, untested, and could fail spectacularly. But it might also give them a fighting chance. As the transmission ended, Ryan turned to his crew. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We all know what's at stake here. We may not have the firepower they do, but we have something they don't: ingenuity. Trust me, and trust each other. We'll make it through this." His words seemed to spark a glimmer of hope among the crew. Even Daniel managed a weak smile, muttering under his breath, "Guess it's time to show these aliens what humans are made of." Outside, the alien fleet began to move, their ships glowing with energy as they prepared to strike. Ryan took a deep breath, gripping the edge of the console. Whatever happened next, they would face it together.